We're all geniuses in hindsight, but is it possible to know ahead of time which car will go from bargain to high-price collectible? We all had those stories of when we could have bought that killer classic for cheap, but now their prices are through the roof. If we just had the money or space at the time. But time waits for no one, and the next future classic is still on Craigslist waiting for the day they're part of a bring-a-trailer auction. What cars can you buy that will appreciate faster than a new car depreciates? Porsche 997. The Porsche 997 in some ways could be seen as an apology. There's one thing that a few manufacturers of cars with cult followings have learned the hard way: don't mess with the headlights. The Porsche 996 was ultimately too much change all at once. Of course, there was the headlights that followed the Boxster's headlight design. For the 911 faithful, other Porsches followed the 911, not the other way around. The so-called fried egg headlights came with the addition of water to cool the engine, instead of how 911s have traditionally been cooled, with air. It was just too much. The 997 didn't go back to air, but it did get rid of the despised fried egg headlights. It was also when Porsche went yes to variants. By the end, there were 24 different variations of the 997, from Targas and Speedsters all the way to the all-fire GT2 RS. Early model years for the 997 might be hard to come by, as 2008 wasn't exactly a stellar year for car sales. But if you can find them, they'll come in a little cheaper than the 997.2. P-Car-wise warns against otherwise tempting low-mileage models, because the car might have missed some key service intervals as well, and some parts just go bad with time anyway. C4 Corvette. The C4 Corvette had one real goal to succeed: not to be the C3 Corvette. The C3 had entered the 70s with a head of steam. The Stingray body was sharp and distinct, the engine options were frightening. Then things changed. An oil embargo alerted the world that gasoline was not always going to be infinite. Smog regulation struggled to stem pollution. Those things and a stagnant economy combined into the death knell of the muscle car. Where the C3 was garish and large with swooping lines, the C4 was smaller with cleaner lines and an uncluttered look. At least on the outside, inside the Corvette adopted a very 80s digital look display. It was a long walk from the valley of the C3 to bringing the Corvette back to its proper standing, and that walk has taken its toll on values. C4s are so cheap in some cases, they're used as the base for conversions into the Mach 5 from Speed Racer. But under that plain wrapper, the Corvette was evolving. In 1990, the ZR1 badge emerged, giving the Corvette back its long-lost oomph. With the big changes at the sharp end of the model, where the C8 finds its engine in the middle for the first time, buyers who maybe lack new Corvette money might start looking for that first Corvette they fell in love with. Honda S2000. The Honda S2000 was a swing at the king that overshot the mark. Ask Mazda. Even they don't know why they've had the simple roadster market all to themselves for so long. The only peer that the plucky MX-5 Miata has is its badge swap cousin, the Fiat 124, and even then, barely. The awkward-looking revival of the MRS offered a unique mid-engine setup but couldn't get past its weird toy looks. The S2000 seemed to have everything you could want: simple lines, a heritage badge, and an adrenaline-pumping high-rev engine. The S2000 has never been cheap as a result, but prices bottomed out in the low 20,000s. But buy now, because the price of an S2000 has risen as much as 34% in a year. E92 BMW M3. The BMW M3 is a victim of its own success. Automotive journalists have over the years emptied their collection of superlatives to describe the experience of driving an M3. In the world of sports sedans, it is the one to beat. Even startup Tesla used the M3 as a benchmark to prove their electric sedans weren't boring to drive. The result is that lots of people, and a fair number of automotive journalists, went and bought M3s. That means that there are a lot of M3s out there. More than a few have been thrashed within an inch of their lives. They've been modified by the giant ecosystem that is the M3 aftermarket. Non-M3 E30s have gone from cheap to expensive because of this. After being the ringer car in more than a few junk car series like the 24 Hours of Lemons, E30s that haven't been flogged like a stubborn mule has become harder, and ones in decent condition with low miles carry a premium. The E92, by some estimations, is in the bottom of its depreciation cycle and will now benefit from attrition and bargain hunting that always does a great job of eliminating said bargains. First generation Viper, the unruly beast. It's hard to understand now in our time of Hellcats and Demons how much of an engine the Dodge Viper was when it came out. Dodge didn't make particularly exciting cars, and even with Carroll Shelby on the payroll, no amount of badging and Go Fast editions was going to change that. Drawing on their technical advisor's claim to fame, Dodge decided to do a modern take of the 427 Cobra, but with a modern engine and modern chassis design. What didn't get modernized was the principle of no-frills, all-power, pure muscle and roadster. The Dodge Viper lived up to that raw aesthetic by being, by all accounts, absolutely terrifying to drive. It was fast, it handled deceptively well, and it was powerful. Future models refined the formula, but like most things, there's something to the purity of the original idea, putting seats and tires around the big engine and letting it go. Prices for the first-gen Viper started to approach Mazda Miata territory, but have slowly been climbing up over the last 10 years. Honda Integra Type R. The star of the tuner crowd might be the Honda Civic, but the first all-star of the scene was Honda's upmarket cousin, the Acura Integra Type R, or Honda outside of the US. The Integra was a factory tuner car meant to capitalize on America's enthusiasm for JDM cars. It came with a VTEC engine that hit 195 horsepower at 8,300 RPM. Its brakes were bigger, its chassis was stiffer, its springs lower. It was an instant classic. That has kept used prices above sticker price, with a few notable examples going to auction for classic muscle car money, with a bring-a-trailer auction hitting $86,100. With only 3,800 in the US and most of them used as intended, unmolested models are hard to come by. But reasonable examples can be had in the $20,000 to $30,000 price range, for now. Land Rover Discovery. Land Rover and investment don't generally go together. Land Rovers in general have one of the worst rates of depreciation, making them a favorite for those looking for second-hand luxury cheap, with all the luxury hassles that go with it. Britain's go-anywhere truck maker ushered in the world of luxury SUVs with the Range Rover and hasn't looked back since, except with the Land Rover Discovery. The Discovery is a compromise between the brutalist Defender and the soft Range Rover. There's been a surge in older 4x4s that long for a time when off-roader wasn't a euphemism. First-generation Range Rovers have gradually gone up, and the Discovery has followed suit, gaining 15% in value last year in England. Porsche 914. When the Porsche 914 was introduced, no one pegged it as a classic. The block for its four-cylinder power plant was borrowed from the Volkswagen Bus, the slowest thing you can buy and still be allowed on public streets. The body was slightly off-putting and brutal, designed by Carmen to replace their Ghia model at Volkswagen. To put the final nail in the coffin, in Europe it was released as a Volkswagen Porsche, and nothing annoys the faithful of an exclusive brand like the words entry model. Despite that, the 914 was a big seller, but until the early 90s it wasn't allowed in the Porsche Owners Club. Then something happened. When Porsche released the Boxster, they desperately wanted to harken back to their legendary 550 Spider, but road testers found a more fitting comparison: the nibble, light, and fun 914. Now, the little Porsche you can buy for $5,000 has had a few six-figure auction results, grabbing the coveted 73 914 2-liter, and you have a classic that will balloon in value. You just have to find one that wasn't neglected. MG BGT. The MG BGT has the look of a spy car for the everyday spy. Part of what makes the Miata so successful is its adherence to a formula that made MGs popular with the British and the Americans who were stationed there. Desire for the sporty little British cars by returning GIs indirectly gave rise to classics like the Chevy Corvette and Ford Mustang. The GT adds a roof and a rear hatch to the MGB's Roadster formula, providing a simple and unique driving experience. Prices have remained low for the humble British, but have been on the rise. As the last of the classics markets start to dry up, the BGT will be the one to get. Ford Thunderbird. What if I told you that there was a completely recognizable American classic that is both an icon and something that you could pick up for the price of a brand new Prius? That would be the Ford Thunderbird. It was the ride of the mysterious woman that Richard Dreyfuss searched all night for in American graffiti. In an era where American cars were big and lumbering, the Thunderbird was a brisk two-seater, but with 50s styling cues like fins and plenty of chrome. Despite its iconic status, prices have stayed around $25,000, but in the last year have started to crawl as much as 30%. The problem with getting one of the classics that jump up in price is all the opportunists that start leaving their number on your window. Like, it's too late, buddy. You should have bought it when no one else wanted it.